Hello everyone, and welcome to our first video of the Vets.to.Coders YouTube channel. In this video we're just going to be covering our welcome aboard, why I'm doing this, we're going to cover the layout of what to expect for the remaining videos, and we're going to end it with getting you guys set up with an environment, and that's going to be me going online, downloading the software, and then walking through how to install it and a proper setup. So a little bit about why I'm doing this. When I was in my first couple classes of programming, I struggled heavily. I did not have a great professor who could convey the knowledge. Everything was refer to the textbook, refer to the textbook. So I didn't learn that well, and I felt like I fell behind quickly, and when I did try and get help, I didn't have anyone to turn to. So I wanted to create a pathway for veterans to get additional help on their programming, and all of this can be done through learning the knowledge here, as well as a community that we're trying to build so that all your questions can be answered. Again, I want this to be the place where veterans can get all the help that they need when it comes to coding and software. And another thing, this channel is not specific to veterans. This could be for anyone who wants to learn to code. I know that the veteran community just needs this the most, because I personally, in all of my classes that I took when I was in college, I don't think I ever had a veteran in any of my classes, and it kind of hurts knowing that veterans have all of these benefits and the GI Bill, and it's not being utilized for something that has so much promise down the road. And it's fine, you know, obviously do what you love, but I'd love to see more veterans get into something that has a lot more upside. So here's some good locations that we can use. So here's an email, the vets.to.coders at Gmail. That's just going to be a location where if you ever want to reach out or have some questions, or if you needed additional help with anything, and you want to reach out to here, I monitor this email. I have it connected to my phone, so if you ever email me, I'll be able to get back to you, hopefully within 24 hours, give or take. For those of you that know what Discord is a chat room channel. You can think of it like that. Very similar to Slack. So I created a Discord channel. You can utilize this to get set up with the Discord. Again, we also have a Slack account. Here's how you can sign up to the Slack account. A GitHub. I'll explain more about GitHub in the next video, but what GitHub is you can think of it as a coding portfolio. So this is my personal account that I have on GitHub, and then this is the account, or it's called the repository, but you can think of it as just our own personal website, where I put all of the code that we're going to be utilizing, as well as additional code that I won't be covering in videos, but that you can use to learn from. You do not need a GitHub account to view any of this, but if you ever wanted to modify any of this code that I have, you can do that through your own GitHub account. It's free, and it's a good place to put all of your own personal projects and then put it on your resume. And then lastly, just to LinkedIn if you guys ever wanted to reach out. So here's what to expect for this channel. I had this broken up into 3 different sections. Each section is its own college course. So the first 3 courses that I took for computer science were the following. It was an introduction to coding course, followed by an object-oriented course, and then lastly with the data structures course. All 3 of these are important in their own ways, and I'll be covering all of the important topics for each class, or for each section. Each section is going to be broken down by its numbering convention. So anything that starts with a 1 is going to be our introduction to coding portion. Anything that starts with a 2 going to be our object-oriented portion, and we're calling that user-defined types. And this will all make sense later, but for those of you that have a little bit of knowledge, you'll be able to see the type of things that we're covering in our introduction, in our object-oriented section, and lastly in our data structures section. So all of these are extremely important, and I'm very passionate about each one of these in their own regard, so we'll be able to get in depth with all of these. Again, everything should be sequential, so you should be able to start off with video 1.1, and then from 1.1 go to 1.2 to 1.3 to 1.4, so on and so forth, until you're done with everything in the 1 section. And then you can move on to the 2 section, and then from the 2 section on to the 3 section. I plan on putting about 9-ish, 10 videos per section. My goal is that they're not too long, and another thing I'd like to do is, a lot like how military classes are taught, I'd like to do a quick little PowerPoint, not too much in depth because I don't want to kill you with a PowerPoint, and then after that we'll actually get into the coding, and I'll record my screen as I'm coding through everything and explaining the logic behind all of my code. That way you guys can actually get in depth. And I'm also giving a tutorial on how to download an IDE, because we all know that the best way to learn is to actually do it. So that's what I'd love to do is have you guys come along with me, so you guys can put the do a picture-in-picture and put my video top left, and then you guys are coding it through with me, and you guys are compiling it and running it, so you guys can actually go through and do all the coding yourself. So a little bit about myself. As you can tell by the EGA in the bottom left-hand corner, I was in the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps from 2013 to 2017. I was a infantry squad leader, which is an 0311. I was a sergeant, which is an E5. As far as the Marine Corps goes, there was nothing significant about what I did. I was as middle of the pack as you could be. Didn't do anything good, didn't do anything bad. Following the Marine Corps, so I got out early in 2017. So by end of January 2017 is when I took my very first coding course, and that was the first time I ever wrote a line of code. I was 23 at the time. So I was the oldest one in my class, and I felt like I was very much behind the curve. Everyone else around me had already taken coding courses in high school, so they had previous knowledge. I didn't know anything, and my class and my professors were not the best, so I struggled heavily. But by December of 2019, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in computer science. I had an emphasis in software engineering, and because of all the teaching that I did in the Marine Corps, as well as the teaching that I did between the beginning of 2017 to the end of 2019, I'd gotten a couple awards for the teaching that I did on campus. So, and when I say teaching, you can think of it as like a teacher's assistant type role. From there, I was offered a position to be a professor for a college course, and the course I taught was the Foundations to Software Engineering. And by the end of 2020, I graduated with my master's degree in computer science, and my emphasis was in machine intelligence. And for those of you that don't know, that is artificial intelligence. And everything after that is to be determined. We will figure out how that goes. So you're going to hear the term IDE a lot. Integrated Development Environment is what it stands for. So an IDE. The best way to think about this is like with a Microsoft Word document. You could very well open up a text editor, a basic text editor, and type everything you need to write an assignment for your school. But that would be very hard to do it on a general text editor. So you utilize a program like a Microsoft Word, which takes care of all of these little fine details for you. It goes and it checks your spelling, it checks your punctuation. Those are the things that an IDE does for you. And it's very, very helpful when it comes to coding. So to cover this, it's an application used to read and write, program in a user-friendly way, and it also has an onboard console. And what that means is you can actually execute and run your code all in this program instead of having to run between your command line and a text editor. And again, all of this will be covered at the end. I just want to give you guys a little bit of details now so it's not too much when we get to the later end of this video. So what I will be utilizing is a program called Eclipse, and I will be showing you how to download and get set up with Eclipse at the end of this video. And I will also be giving a tutorial on how to utilize VS Code, and then there's also a website that you can use called cpp.sh, which is just c++.sh, stands for shell. So C++ shell is a website, very slow, but it is an option if you don't want to download anything. For those of you that are Windows users, they have an application called Visual Studio, which is different than Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a very small portion, while Visual Studio itself is a very large program. Visual Studio itself can be thought of as a competitor for Eclipse. They do almost all the same things. So for those of you that want to utilize want to utilize Visual Studio instead of Eclipse, more power to you. Go ahead and do that. Just note that there are a lot of YouTube videos to get you set up with download and installation of all of those. So if that's what you're looking for, you can jump to a different YouTube video to get you set up with a proper install and then jump back for our second video. This is what Eclipse looks like. This is just our basic little coding portion at the top and then our console at the bottom, so I can run it and it's going to read everything back to me at the bottom. And you guys will see how useful this is at the end of the video. And this is the cpp.sh website. So again, this is just a snippet. So this is the code portion here, and then down here you can run the code and you will see it here. But when we run this later, you'll see just how slow it is, and it runs slow when it doesn't do anything. As we get to our later projects, when they get pretty large and pretty hefty, this will become incredibly slow. So, getting started with Eclipse. So you want to run over to Eclipse Downloads, and from there you want to download the IDE, and you can find tutorials for the Windows users on how to install, but I will be walking through on how to do a download and installation of this IDE, and I'm a Mac user, so you'll be able to see it from the Mac side of things. And again, I'm going to end every video with this page, and this page is just reiterating all of the stuff, which is how to reach out, the website that we're using, our Discord channel, our Slack channel, our GitHub account, which is for all of us. This is our website, and then a LinkedIn. Now let's get started on our download. So the first thing you want to do is you want to run over to Google, and we can just do download Eclipse and download Eclipse. And it's going to already figure out what machine you're using. I'm using a 64-bit. Most of you that are using any computer that has been created pretty much in the past 10 years, you're using a 64-bit. And over here it is downloading it for us. Sorry, I do not want to donate to Eclipse. Maybe next time, but not really. And now we're going to get started with our install. So we are good. We're going to start our installation. Clear this. Yes, I understand I'm downloading something from the internet. Eclipse installer. Awesome. So Eclipse, we are going to be utilizing C++. So we want Eclipse IDE for C++ developers. That's us. Where is it going to save our installation? That's fine. And then it's going to give us two pop-up windows. We're going to want to accept both of them. So accept. And then the next one that comes up, we want to accept that as well. And we are good with this. So for this, I'll take it over to cpp.sh, let that sit in the background. And again, we want to accept our second one. And now we want to launch Eclipse. So our Eclipse is opening now, and we're getting set up there. Now it's going to ask us to create a workspace. So I'm going to do that right now. So I want to create a folder on my desktop, and we'll just call it Workspace. Workspace. Now this is going to be the location of where all our files are stored. So that's the whole reason why I created it, and I wanted to put it on the desktop because that's a very easy place to find it. So I could put it wherever I want, but you'll see later on in the video why I'm putting it on a desktop. It's easy to find and easy to get to. Normally Eclipse does not take this long to start up. Okay, so let's get started. We want to open up in our desktop and workspace. That is the location of where we want to start. Now launch. Okay, now let's get started with the review IDE configuration settings. Yeah, let's do that. Welcome to Eclipse. Thank you very much. Refresh resources automatically. No, thank you. Show line numbers, absolutely. Check spelling, I'm a horrible speller, so yes. Execute jobs in background, yes. Text, oh, no. And enable preferences recorder, no. Awesome, so we're finished. Next, so now we want to create our first project. And I just want to show you guys how to get started with this. That way you're a little bit familiar and maybe you can play around with it on your own time. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to File, and I want to create a new C++ project. And we can call this whatever we want. We are going to call it, we'll call it Tester. And we're going to make an empty project, and I'm going to use my Mac compiler. So now we want to finish. And this is our tester, so I can get rid of all of this. This is unnecessary, so minimize. I can get rid of that. And I want, now I'm in tester, so my tester file, I want to right click or two-finger click depending on what you're using. And I want to create a new source file. A new source file is every time that we create a C++ file, it is of type source. So just about everything we're going to be doing for the remainder of all of the coding on this channel is going to be created in a source file. Now we have to give it a name. And we can just call it hello.cpp. We are creating a hello.c++ file, and we will open it up. Now I already have a snippet of code saved, and that's what we're going to execute. So I will paste it in, and this is our current code that we have, or our little snippet of code that we're going to be running. So I want to Control S to save it, Control S, Command S, depending on what you're utilizing. We can minimize this. Now what I want to do from here is I want to build the project and then run the project. So the way you do that is you have to build first, and build is going to come up with all of our errors that we have, if any. Now looking at our build, it looks like we are okay. There are no errors that come up, and they would present themselves if there was an error. The next thing we want to do is we want to run. So we hit the play button. This executes our code. And it's only the first time it'll ask this, but we want to run it as a local C++ application. It won't ask this again, so we just set that up for the first execution. And it's going to execute our code, except it didn't. Let's try it one more time. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's running a little bit slow. So we just displayed hello world, and the Marine Corps is better than the Army. That's extremely obvious. We all know that. So that is our simple execution of a project. I don't expect anyone to understand anything that we see up here yet. That will be covered in our first real video, which is 1.1. But for now, we just noticed that we got this code here and we got it executing. There is a really good community out there when it comes to getting things set up. So if for whatever reason it's not executing, you can copy and paste your issue into Google, and that should be able to tell you how to fix your problem. I want to give an example of an error. So I'll erase the end quote. Now that is a mistake. It is saying that it expects an end quote and it is not getting it, and it's already giving us a little squiggly here saying that there's an error. It's not telling us the specifics of it, but it's saying, hey, there is a problem here with your syntax. So now let's try and build it, and then let's go and run it. Now it's telling us that there's an error with the launch. So if we go over here to read, it says, warning, there's a missing terminating quote character. So it's telling us that we do not have the quote character, and it's telling us it is on line 10, position 10. So line 10 is here, position 10 would be this first character. It's saying that it doesn't have the end character. And you can also tell by the error of where this little red X is presenting itself. So let's fix that. So let's add our quotes at the end. That is fixed. We have to Control S to save it. You'll notice that whenever I make a modification, a little asterisk shows up next to the hello. When I Control S, that shows that it's saved, and all modifications have been saved. From there, we can hit the play button. The play button will actually build and execute. For those of you that are using a different version, or maybe a later version of Eclipse, it is standard to have to do build and then run, but this version of Eclipse that I'm using allows you to just hit the play button and it'll automatically build, which is a neat feature. So that takes us to the end of everything that we're doing with our Eclipse. Now the reason why I showed Eclipse first is because it's the preferred method. And if you don't want to use Eclipse, I understand, and I will show two other methods on how to execute code. They would be the VS code, and then the last one being the cpp.sh. So the next one I'm going to be showing is the VS code. So we can close this. Yes, I want to close the IDE. And what I want to do is download VS Code. I already have it downloaded, but this is where you would download it. Whatever you're using, whether that's a Windows, Linux, or Mac, download the appropriate VS Code for you. Now, I already have it downloaded, Visual Studio Code. So this just shows that I have it downloaded, that it exists for me. I'm not going to be doing anything with this currently. I'm going to show you how I'm going to open up my file and execute it, but it's a little bit different. This just shows that I do have it downloaded. So I want to go into my workspace. I want to go into tester, and then here is my C++ file. So I can two-finger click or right-click, however you want to do it, and we want to open with Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code you can think of as just a beautiful text editor. It does not have the ability to compile code and run the code. I'm going to be showing you how we do that manually. So for those of you that are Windows users, you're going to have to get something called PuTTY. For those of you that are Mac and Linux users, this is already all built in for you. So PuTTY is just a good command line feature for the Windows users, and if you're a Mac user or Linux user, I'll show you how to get set up with terminal. So you just need to set up terminal. Now terminal is going to start off in the very first position that it opens up to, which is users / whatever name you're at. And the way you can view that is pwd, which stands for print working directory. So by hitting enter, it tells me that I'm in users and Daniel Walsh. Now from here, I want to go into desktop. I'll be very specific. I want to get into desktop. From desktop, I want to open up my workspace. From my workspace, I want to open up tester, and then from here, I can build and then launch the program. So we're going to do that step by step. So now there's a command that's ls. ls is a list command. It's going to list everything that I currently have in the Daniel Walsh folder. So we hit enter, and it's showing us everything. So it's our applications, our library, my desktop, my documents, downloads, pictures, so on and so forth. So what I want to do is get into desktop. So I go change directory into desktop. Enter. Now I'm in desktop. Now from desktop, I now can do an ls command to show me everything that I have available, but I already know that I want to change directory into workspace. Workspace being the item that I first created, this folder over here. So we're changing directory into workspace. Now we're in workspace. Now if I were to do ls, it's going to list everything in workspace, but we already know that only one item exists in workspace. So let's see what that looks like. Only one item, and it's tester. So now we want to change directory into tester. cd tester. Now we're in tester. So if I were to do ls into tester, it's going to display both of these two items that we have. So ls, these are our two items. Our debug folder, which we don't have to worry about, and our cpp file. So I want to leave this available so you guys can see how a new file gets added into here, which is our executable. So back in Eclipse, all we had to do was click build. When we clicked build, it created the executable. So I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. So I do C++ hello.cpp. This command here is going to build the entire project, and it's utilizing this. And of course, I could have opened it in many other ways, but Visual Studio VS Code is a very good way of viewing everything. It color codes it, and that makes it very helpful when you get into very large projects. So back over here, C++ hello. If I hit enter and nothing pops up, it means it was good. Also notice down here a new file was created, a.out. Now what we want to do is we want to execute this a.out file. The way you do that is period /a.out. And we hit enter. Now when we hit enter on a.out, it's going to execute this file that we just created. So we hit execute, and now it just executed the file, so it says hello world, and the Marine Corps is greater than the Army. Now let's go over here and let's make an error. So again, let's get rid of our end quote, and I need to save it, of course. So Command S or Control S, depending on what you're using. So we know that there's an error over here. We know that we're missing a quote that should be sitting right here, and it is not currently there. So what we have to do over here now is we need to rebuild and re-execute. If I were to, now, sorry to jump here, but quick thing about these terminals, if you press the up arrow, it's going to be all your recent commands. So a quick way of doing a command quickly that you've already done is just the up-down arrow. So if I were to re-execute, it's going to display the same exact thing as it did before, and the reason was we haven't rebuilt anything. So we have to rebuild and then re-execute in order to see these changes. So if I were to just execute it again, it's going to give me the same results as before. But if I were to build it, it's now going to give me an error. So it's telling me, warning, missing the terminating quote character, and it's telling us that we have a starting location, but we do not have an ending location. That's what it's pointing at. So we know how to fix it. So we'll go over here and we will add our quote. And of course, we want to save it. Once you've saved it, we want to come over here and we want to build it. So we want to build our program just by doing hello.cpp. Nothing shows up, which means there were no errors. And now we want to execute it. So now we need to do our execution command. And that is how we execute. So again, hello world, the Marine Corps is greater than the Army. And we're just going to do one more thing, and we're going to do just a cout hi. and that'll be the end of it. So we want to save it, and then we're going to come back over here and we want to rebuild it, and then we want to execute it. And because I did not do an end line character, we see hi right here, and then everything else comes directly after it without giving it a new line. If I were to come back over here and provide it with a new line, we'll save it, then we come back and we rebuild, re-execute. Now it'll have its own line. Hello world, the Marine Corps is greater than the Army, and hi. So that is everything that we need to know to get you guys set up with the terminal. And so this is the terminal or the command line. Those are the proper terminologies. And this is the VS Code, which you could think of as just a very beautiful text editor. A big reason why people might want to use this is way less space on your computer than the full Visual Studio and Eclipse. So Microsoft created Visual Studio, and then because it's such a large program, they wanted to create a much smaller program, which is this one here called VS Code. So this is VS Code, and this is our command line. So now we're done with both of these, and I want to show you guys the last way in which you can execute code, being the C++ shell website. So again, we already have everything copied, so we'll paste it in here. This is our line of code. And if you guys saw how quick everything is on the command line and in Eclipse, you pretty much push the button and it's instantly done for you. And it's a very small program, so you expect that. Now, this is done a little bit differently. This is definitely not as fast and not as seamless, but this is free every time. It doesn't cost you any space on your computer, and you can get to it very easily. So we have this code. Now, instead of building it and running it, all you simply have to do is run, and it will do all of it for you. So it's compiling, program is running, and here's our output. And I know that looked very fast. It seemed like all this happened very quickly, but it actually was rather slow. And I know it's tough to understand that right now, but when we get to really large files and when we start doing some really complex things, this could turn into a very slow process, and it could be very frustrating. So again, we want to run it. We just made the modification of hi, and it did it. So now let's just make an error just to see what it looks like. So we run it, and let's see what kind of error it produces. So it tells us that we have an error on line 11, and it says the warning is that it's missing a terminating quote. So we'll add the terminating quote, and we are done. And then of course we'll run it again, and it runs again at the bottom. I hope so. So here's an example of it going very slowly. This could happen from time to time, and if it continues like this, I will cancel and try it again, because this is way too long. Cancel and run. Yep, this should not be taking this long to do a compilation and execution of code that is very simple. So let's try it one more time and run. So right now it's being extremely glitchy. So this is an example of why you might want to utilize the two methods that I showed before, being a full IDE, an integrated development environment, which is Eclipse, or if you just want to use a nice text editor and the terminal window. And again, this probably will not work now. It looks as if it's timed out in some fashion, and it's not going to allow it to compile and execute. Try it one more time before I give up on it. But this is a good example of showing that this is not 100%. Okay, well, I'm a rather impatient person, so I'm going to call it quits with this one because this is not working. Anyways, that brings us to the end of our video. The next video, I'll be covering a little bit more of a setup. I'll be talking about why you want to be learning C++ specifically, why you want to be learning coding, and then some small little details, and I'll be going a lot more in depth on the GitHub website. So I hope to see you guys in the next video, and after the next video is where we actually get started in our real life coding. So everything for this video and the next video is more just setup to get everyone comfortable so we can hit the ground running with 1.1. Hope to see everyone there. Bye-bye.